me also look at your routine too behind you, and let me kind of look through there. Like I said, if I can take some stuff in here, if I were going to fine tune this, I would say for right now, I would suggest maybe trying to eliminate this early mouthpiece buzzing stuff.
Okay.
Just because you're starting off, the first notes of the day are not going to be on the horn; they're going to be on the mouthpiece, and it's mouthpiece buzzing is different. And it's one of the reasons why it works, I think, is because it forces you to buzz at the proper frequency rather than letting the horn slot the note for you. But sometimes that difference can get in the way, I think, and in this particular case, maybe it might be helpful to avoid that. And I also think that the trombone glisses are going too low right off the bat. I would almost say, I would almost suggest, find a pencil here and just kind of jot down a thought here. I would almost say start here at the star.
Okay.
Where you're kind of already up, sort of into your upper register, and try to start thinking about, this range above the staff is more being the center of your range rather than this range here in the staff being kind of the center of the range. At least, as far as tenor playing goes. So, I mean, if you think about starting up a little bit higher, and then, you could go here. I know that's kind of extreme for your first notes of the day, but that might, and it's optional anyway, but then jumping in, and then maybe kind of jumping back and catching some of this stuff. See, the thing about going down, low B flat and below and doing these exercises, that's the range where I'm afraid that you're going to loosen the mouth corners. And when you're playing, when you move on from whatever it is that we're doing, you do whatever you need to do in order to make it work. But as far as like a routine stuff, my thought is that the routine we should try to, whatever it is that we want to work on for mechanics, that we try to force ourselves to play absolutely correct, at least for that. And this stuff kind of gets a little bit low. However, we could do the same thing and just take everything up a partial or two.
Right. Yeah.
So for this exercise, something really good for you might be to just take it and start everything up two partials, but play the same positions. Sensation, but because everything is shifted up, as you're coming down then to this, you can either watch yourself in the mirror or think about, am I maintaining my mouth? Yeah, that looks pretty good to me. Interesting way of approaching this particular exercise, and A2 here, you could do the same thing, just take them up, transpose them up a little bit. But another possible way of doing these exercises would be to buzz into each little set. So again, this is not an upstream buzzing in, it's not an upstream exercise, but you get the idea. So you buzz in each thing. So let's have you do a little bit of that. So what were we buzzing into? I was buzzing into an E flat. Let's have you, buzz into the E flat and then do that. Now buzz into the F. Yeah, the mouth corners look great to me now, and then that's that's still at that kind of register where you were before trying to let them collapse.
Right.
Pentatonic figures, I think pentatonics are great because I play a lot of jazz and I use them to improvise a lot. And these aren't particularly low, although they do kind of go into somewhat lower register. Again, since they're just pentatonics, you could take, what is that, just an A-flat major pentatonic. You can do, again, just basically I'm going to start like this here, but up an octave. Or something similar, yeah. I mean, he even gives you... So, I would just take those exercises and push them up. These basic lip slurs, let me kind of show you some of the things that Reinhardt did with these things. Very similar. I mean, everybody has these kind of overtone series flexibilities. Reinhardt had a couple of different approaches that he would do with this. And again, with some of these things like A2 here, I would flip it upside down. So that you're starting on the higher note and descending instead. And for something like this that maybe changes directions, it might be a little bit harder to do. But it's relatively easy to figure it out. The other thing that Reinhardt did that might be helpful for you is he generally recommended people practice these things repeated on one breath, where the first time would be tongued and the second time would be slurred. This is kind of almost backwards from, again, tradition. What we would say, if you're working on something, you want to move the air first, so you do it without the tongue, and that makes sure that the air is moving, and then you do it tongued. What you can sometimes do, though, is it's easier to slur things, letting things be a little bit looser, and then when you go to tongue on stuff, you've got your embouchure formation doesn't have the proper form. It's not firmed up enough.
Right, yeah.
So by tonguing first, you're kind of saying, okay, I'm going to be emphasizing making sure that my embouchure formation is firmed first, and then on the slur, making sure that I maintain that formation. So A1 would turn into...
Okay, so it's not a legato tongue. It's a
definite staccato tongue at first, and Reinhardt's exercise, like one of his might have been. So something like that. Maybe those are just a little bit too short. So maybe you'd repeat them a couple of times. Let's take B1 because that one would be a good one. I didn't play it exactly right.
Is it all in
one breath?
Both times.
Both times in one breath, something like that. And so maybe we would need to shorten that somehow, or maybe just kind of do something and try it again, and maybe even in a different position.
As I ran out of breath, I know.
Yeah, so we'd have to.
The dropping of the corners is something I do to compensate for running out of breath.
Yeah.
For some reason.
Well, see, now I think, ironically though, I think if you can maintain the focus in the corners, your aperture's not going to be quite so fat because it's going to be a little bit more focused.
So the air would.
And so you'll use less air, and then making sure that you have the correct embouchure motion, which is working pretty well for you in that register. I've done some octave slurs, and that was something that I was also going to mention to you as a good possible exercise. Pick a chord arpeggio. B flat is what I tend to use, and just using notes in that triad. Do some octave slurs that expand. For me personally, and again, this would be pretty good for you, I'm going to just kind of rush you through an octave slur routine that I might use. And I'll start on the F above the staff. I'll start on an F above the staff. And my first note of the day is usually one of these two notes. here. And then try this. After you do that, I want you to keep everything set as you were for the high B flat, and breathe through the nose.
Mm-hmm.
So that when you're reattacking the the lower F rather,
Mm-hmm.
you kind of have that sensation of having your mouth corners already in place. Okay, try that. So
I'm
start on the high F.
High F.
High F.
And I'm gonna breathe through my nose.
Yeah, go ahead and. But okay, let's. All right, let me stop and talk to you about this then. Okay, this was something that I was considering not mentioning, but especially since we've got only the one lesson, and you're gonna take lessons from Doug Elliott and Dave Sheets probably later on too.
Yeah.
And they may or may not mention this, but they're liable to mention this too. And if you read in the encyclopedia, read a little bit up on his mouth corner inhalations.
Right.
Because that's something else that could be something that you would work towards. The basic gist of that is that you keep your rim contact exactly where it is normally, and underneath that your lips stay touching. So everything inside your lips are touching. And what you do is you kind of pull your mouth corners back open and breathe everything in through the mouth corner, rather than opening up the mouth and getting that, and that's another thing.
Yeah. And I think I read that. Set, place, breathe.
Yes, exactly.
And
so you firm, that's where the free buzzing in is really good, because you're already in the formation. Mm-hmm. So if you think of that, like all I have to do is add air and I'd be free buzzing.
Right.
And set that back in there.
Yeah.
So your lips are set, there's no aperture formed yet. So let me just see you setting your lips in buzzing firmness. Alright, is there a hole is there an aperture in there? It looks kind of like you're blowing through a hole. Okay, close that up. Close that hole.
No?
Yeah, close that hole, please. Okay, now set your mouthpiece on the lips like that. Alright, breathe through the nose and just buzz. That's the gist of it. Okay, now let's do that.
Does the hole open back
the
up?
The hole blows open. Yeah,
okay.
it's as soon as you start blowing. So you're starting with your lips touching.
Right.
And then the aperture forms as soon as you start blowing air. That's the idea. Okay, but let's do that on the horn. All right, and I think that's enough. Okay, so firm your lips, then bring the mouthpiece on the lips. Now just play an F above the staff. No, you're breathing. I can hear you breathing through the horn. Breathe through the nose. Yeah.
Sorry.
Now play that F. Good. Take the instrument off your lips and do that again. Take the instrument off the lips, do that one more time, and then do the slur. Please don't move. Okay, and now breathe through the nose and start on the lower B flat, lower F, and do that again. Okay, good. You remembered that too. I was going to comment that. And the other thing is, and you can watch the video when you're doing this, and we'll think about it a little bit when I have you do a little bit more. When you freeze, you notice how I kind of let up a little bit. Yeah. Don't let up.
And keep it.
Yeah, everything stays. All you're doing, and in some ways this is going to work you a little bit harder, because as you're kind of isometrically, you're as far as you're trying to. As an analogy, you're fooling your chops into thinking that they're continuing to play that note, even though you're not blowing air.
Mm-hmm.
And then by inhaling through the nose and then starting in a low register, I'm thinking that's going to help you keep your mouth corners locked in place. Okay, so that could be your first approach of the day, is to do something like that. Then if we're doing maybe the octave slurs on B flat, we can do the same thing, except we're going to start on. Same thing down in and fourth position now. Breathe through the nose. Okay, so let's have you start over because that's all right. And just it's a little like juggling, you know. As soon as you get a ball that you're moving back and forth. Okay, here's another ball. Now juggle. All right, remember to do the embouchure motion and the horn angle changes while you're doing that too. Keep everything firm. Breathe through the nose and start on the lower one. Yeah. Now do this. Okay, so just take them, and then afterwards take the mouthpiece off the lips. Give you a second to rest. Now do the same thing down on B flat.
Lower.
Yeah. Yeah, breathe through the nose. Good. I also notice, or at least I think that you're mainly doing breath attacks on that, which is fine.
Yes.
Okay, that's good. Those are good exercises. Eventually, you'll want to also, I mean, even in the same routine, not necessarily eventually, as in next week, but after doing that, you can go ahead and establish a tongue attack too.
Okay.
But just to kind of wrap up the discussion about mouth corner inhalations, when you feel like you're ready, another approach to kind of start learning to do that is you do the same kind of approach. You're setting, you're firming, then setting. Except instead of breathing through the nose, you just open up your mouth corners and breathe through the mouth corners. You can do that with a no tongue attack too. Or you can do a tongue attack with that too. And that's kind of, you're going to feel like you can't get in as much air as quickly as you can breathing through the whole mouth. Especially as low brass players, we don't have as much space on the outside of our lips to take in a huge amount of air. Eventually you might find though that the stability that provides is beneficial enough that you're willing to work with that more often than having to, because you can always just drop your jaw and take a breath as you need to.
I think this is the biggest opposite of what traditional practice is, because and I've had a couple of lessons of that too.
Yeah, that's a breathing gym, an old Reinhardt exercise where you do that, and you get in so much air so quickly and it feels so relaxed, but then that's the drawback of that being, and to exaggerate that, and then you're coming back and you're, as Reinhardt would say, you're hitting a moving target when you do that. Now, I think there's some value to breathing in that way. It's certainly a natural way of breathing, and sometimes, you just need that much air, and you need to move that much air, and that's the only way you're going to be able to do it. I think it's easier to switch that on and off than it is to do this other thing and switch this on and off. The mouth corner inhalations and keeping everything steady takes a lot of practice, comparatively, or at least I think so. Maybe it's because we've come up to that traditional approach where we're supposed to take in air that way. Right. So when it comes to performing, you do what you need to. It's the octave slurs on the B flat. Let's expand on this a little bit. We could do it kind of where we were sliding things up by half steps and trying to get going on that. But maybe another thing to also think of while you're doing that, and especially as you're getting more comfortable and able to keep the embouchure motion working consistently, is to add other octaves onto it. So you could do just on the Fs.
Do you want me to do corner breath, or do you want me to do nose breath?
Try whatever you think. Good. Now do that one over and make sure that you maintain the horn angle change the way that we were talking about it. last time was in terms of function, how I want it to function in terms of what I was looking for. Even though it didn't sound as good, that was closer to what we wanted to be happening.
And what's happening is I'm trying to sound good.
Mm-hmm.
And on that last one, I said, I don't care what it sounds like. And it did feel like more like what I wanted it to feel like.
Yeah, okay. And so that I think that's the good sign. And it's not so much what these kinds of exercises and these ways of playing sound like, it's what they're going to eventually do for your playing that is important. There are all sorts of things that we do as players can do that can help us get by. But from a functional standpoint, they're limited in a certain way, and I think that kind of collapse of the embouchure formation and descend is one of them. Yeah, you can get big and fat, sounds down there, but it can limit what it feels like to get up into the upper register. And so I think, again, working on that, and it's about maybe getting to low B flat and below, maybe low B flat to the F, where I think then things are really starting to collapse a little bit for you too. So again, you can also use that thing where you're edging down by half steps to try to maintain it as far down as you can go. And another way of looking at it is the further you can go without having to resort to that collapsation to get the notes to speak and be big and fat, the more lower range that you're going to have when you do have to do that. In order to do that, it's just kind of pushing everything down for you. All right, and then getting up to, above the F, you can do the same thing. If you want to add that second octave. Okay, so obviously I'm rushing through it a little bit faster. To the low G flat also. Yeah, that's probably exactly what you're going to want to do at first for the lower registers, to play soft and let the sound a little bit pinched. And while you're doing these exercises, the embouchure motion itself should help you open that up while maintaining the mouth corner focus. So these are two good things I think for you to kind of think about while you're doing the octave slurs. And the octave slurs I think would be a good kind of exercise to get that kind of thing happening. Yeah.
I'm probably going to run out of video in a few seconds.
Oh, okay, so, yeah. So, what questions do you have that you want to get on video too?
The biggest question I had was about the setting before the breath.
Yeah.
And setting actually before the mouthpiece is placed on.
Yeah.
So you went over that. I'm going to have to think about the contradiction in breathing because what would happen if you modified so that I know what would happen. You would get the Valsalva thing.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so that's the drawback to doing that. I know some folks who actually even advocate breathing in and setting at the same time. Yeah. I would not get too obsessed over this. Think of this as like nose inhalations. You can think of it as just an exercise. Okay. It's going to force you to play with more embouchure stability. And so then when you're done doing that and moving on, you do whatever it is you need to do. And if that involves breathing through your mouth center, then breathe through the mouth center. If it's going to become the way that you play normally, it will become that way because it's working, not because you force yourself into doing something that's not going to be effective for you.
There is an aperture in the center of the embouchure.
Yes.
There's one circular.
Yeah,
I can't remember whose pictures they show. You try and maintain that circle.
Well, yeah. I mean, there's. Have you seen the Lloyd Leno videos?
The slow motion from the real old ones.
Yes, it's like film. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, okay. Yeah. So I mean, you can see that the aperture doesn't stay put. I mean, the lips are opening and closing very fast. Okay, but Yes, your aperture does open. And with the Reinhardt, with the mouth corner inhalations and with the nose inhalations, with those exercises, you're supposed to start with your lips touching, so it's closed,
right.
and then let the aperture be blown apart. And again, I would just say, think of these as an exercise for your routine work, for working on very specific things, and then don't worry about it when you're done working on it, unless you find it helpful. In which case, okay, now I can start thinking about, when I'm playing this brochure etude, or when I'm playing, the Hindemith Sonata, or whatever it is that you're working on. You can say, okay, mouth corner inhalations help here because of this. The whole idea of doing that is to maintain a very stable embouchure for your entire range and help you set and put it in the same spot all the time.
Thank you, David, for a wonderful lesson and a wonderful time that I spent with you to find out more about my embouchure and about the Reinhardt system. It was wonderful to get to work with such an informed teacher, and I know that anyone watching the videos, if you want to contact Dave Wilken in North Carolina, Wilktone is the place to do it, and he will be more than happy to answer questions that you have. I wanted to close by sharing some of the ideas that David had in an article that he wrote about the Reinhardt system, and I think this is the most important part about the Reinhardt system as a whole. While understanding of the pivot system includes an awareness of multiple facets of technique, each point is only addressed in practice according to the proper time for each individual student. Once work on brass technique has been completed for the day, all pivot system procedures are to be forgotten, and attention is given to the music and expression. Dr. Donald S. Reinhardt was fond of saying, "There are as many systems as there are people." Any pedagogical approach that takes individual physical and mental differences into account is impossible to summarize. Another expression Reinhardt was fond of saying was, "One man's meat is another man's poison." Attempting to conform every individual brass student into one single approach will have its successes, but it will also have its failures. In many cases, the fault lies not in the student, but in the teacher's insistence on conforming to what he or she thinks is correct. Many teachers instruct their students according to how they play instead of considering that some of their advice may actually be the exact opposite of how their student will play best. Unfortunately, this is still all too common today. As information about the pivot system and other similar approaches become more available, it will become harder for teachers to continue their cookie-cutter approach to brass instruction. With the development of organizations such as the Dr. Donald S. Reinhardt Foundation, dedicated to preserving the teaching legacy of Reinhardt and his pivot system, more brass students, performers, and teachers will have access to the pedagogical genius of Dr. Reinhardt. So those are David's words. David's lesson was equally entertaining, informative, and I had a terrific time. If anyone wants to order information, or not information, but the text, the encyclopedia of the pivot system, or the pivot system for trombone or trumpet, you can contact another Reinhardt teacher, David Sheets, at Airstream Dynamics, www.airstreamdynamics.com/asdproducts.htm. Once again, thanks to Dave Wilken for this lesson.